welcome everybody to Retro Encounter 2-1. I am here still, Stephen Meyerink, Taylor's on the boards. We were discussing last night whether or not I would appear, and due to a series of, well, you could call it fortunate or unfortunate events depending on your perspective, I'm here. How's it going, everybody? Joining me today is, as last night, Josh Curry.
Hey, everyone.
Mike Sollosi, a newcomer.
Hey.
And Peter Triezenberg.
Woof. Hi.
So Peter Doggenberg and Josh are old news. We don't care about them. They've been here, and I'm old too. So Mike Sollosi, what are you here to play today? What are we starting this month?
Well, we started up playing Final Fantasy X, that early PS2 classic that a lot of people really like and a lot of people really wish had a real-world map. You know, that one.
Polarizing. Well, you know what?
Features much laughter.
We couldn't make it 5 seconds in without commenting on that. You know, Final Fantasy X is, I started the series with basically 7, and I never played it before. And I feel like ever since 7, I got into the series, every time a game comes out, you get that group of jerk-asses who are like, the series totally died after 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. So 10 is, of course, when they really did start to change it up from the PlayStation 1 format. You had no world map. You don't have the ATV anymore. And so, I'm sure you guys are with me on this, that, on the internet you regularly read, like, 10 is where the series died, the characters are terrible, Titus sucks, the battle system is crap.
You know what's also almost as controversial as the world map is how you actually pronounce the main character's name. Have we already had this discussion?
We had this discussion last night. It was actually our last conversation, because
I'm pretty sure Steven said he was going to murder somebody if they pronounced it wrong.
Well, I changed his name online to a very inappropriate word, so that's how I solved that problem.
But you're going to spend hundreds of hours now playing with penis or whatever you called him.
I kind of want to know what you called him now.
I'll type it in the Skype window.
This is unsent. Oh.
No,
yeah,
no.
I can't say that on the recording.
We're PG-13. We only get one bad word, so you need to save it for maximum impact. And I don't know that this particular one is worth it.
Yeah, well,
not that I'm down in the name.
And also, it's me on the podcast, which means I'll probably use up all the ones that we have.
You did last night.
Well, yeah, I'm just renaming everything that I'm allowed to rename. I'm renaming something ridiculous just because I don't know. Like, I mostly remember Final Fantasy X. I played it about 10, 11, 12 years ago when it was a couple years old.
Oh my god, 10, 11, 12 years ago, it was a couple years old.
So, okay, the answer to that math problem is that this game came out 14 years ago.
Wow.
And that sounds crazy, and that we would even call it a retro game, but it's 14 years old, which means there's more time in between FF10 and Chrono Trigger than FF10 to present.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It doesn't.
10 came out half my life ago, so if you don't think it's retro, shut up and deal with it.
I was in second grade reading the strategy guide at my local elementary school.
I was in sixth grade math.
I don't know where I was.
Let's see. I think I was a freshman in high school when it came out.
Yeah, I was somewhere in middle school.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things. It doesn't feel old, and I'm playing on the PS4 version, so having it in HD, it doesn't look old.
Yeah, Square Enix does a lot of work on their HD releases. I really have some respect for the amount of time they put into them. It's not just like, hey, we up-resed it.
Like that.
Yeah, they
Final Fantasy VII.
Well, that one's a different case.
No, but you're right about that. They actually changed some character models and like adjusted some details on, I think, Auron's robe, like his sling is a little different or something, and everything. It doesn't look like really janky. Like I remember you were discussing several episodes of Random Encounter ago how on the Type 0 like HD version they had clearly not rezzed up some backgrounds.
Oh yeah, they were like 8-bit bitmaps.
Yeah, they're like really bad textures in some things, and the models looked okay, not great. Here, everything looks really good, and I mean part of that was that it looks good 14 years ago on the PS2, but they did put some effort into this remake. It's impressive.
Yeah, the art style is sublime, and that's really, I think that's a big part of why it's held up so well.
Absolutely. Well, because we said it sort of glibly, but like FF7, like even if you did an HD release of the original version, like you only have so much to work with there. Like if you added some additional polygons to 3 polygons, now you have 6.
Everyone looks like a super awkward triangle in that game.
And don't get me wrong, that's charming in its own way, but
Well, and honestly, like mid-90s polygons have not aged super great, especially when you compare them to mid-90s sprites that still look all right, surprisingly, to this day.
It's like, what is that? That it's like an image that goes around like Imager and like Tumblr. It's a picture of Rinoa saying to Squall, "You're the cutest looking guy at the party. You know, the best looking guy here." And then it zooms in on his face, and it's like a disaster of pixels. But maybe so. I don't think any of us here is playing the original version of Final Fantasy X, the PS2, and I think everyone here is playing some form of the HD edition. So maybe we could talk about what version we're each playing. Mike, you go for it.
Okay, I'm playing the HD version on PS3. I wish there was an option to switch to old PS2 audio just so I could compare, but otherwise it looks and sounds great so far.
And then Josh?
I have the PS4 version. I played the first half an hour on that, but for the most part I've been playing on the Vita. I think over the course of the month I'll be jumping back and forth between the two.
Because of the glory of cross-save, which we should talk about.
Which is fantastic. It is the best thing in the world. The gaming going more like easily cross-platform in this last generation is like my favorite thing. But just complete other thing. It really pisses me off that I've now bought this game for Vita, PS3, and PS4. I should have been able to buy it in one place and at least get like the Vita version for free.
Yeah, well, because a lot of places do cross-buy, and it's sort of a bummer that in the case of Square Enix, there could be people who have triple dipped. Like, I mean, I already have the PS3 and the Vita version because my roommate bought the Vita one, so I got lucky and got one of them free. But if I buy the PS4 one, that'll be every PlayStation console other than PS1 and PSP that I've bought FF10 on.
So I literally have 4 versions of this, and I actually have them sitting on the shelf next to each other just to, like, mock me. Because I have to put them in alphabetical order, and then I also have to feel real shame that I've bought this multiple times.
Hey, you know what, though? I honestly, this is a game I don't, not from a financial standpoint, but it's not one that I mind buying multiple times. Although, I did forget, Peter, what platform are you playing it on?
I was playing it on the PS4, but I stopped due to reasons. So now I'm playing it on PS3.
And what are those reasons? Because I think I'm not sure that everyone's aware of this. Because Josh said he wasn't aware of this at all. The PS4 one up front sounds like the best version because you get further visual enhancements and both soundtracks. But there's a major issue, isn't there?
The PS4 is easily the best looking version of the game, and it includes the option to switch between the new soundtrack and the original PS2 soundtrack, which is great. I love that option. But somewhere down the line, I don't know how this happened, they broke the random number generator that determines random battles in this game. So every time you play the game, battles will take place with the same enemy encounters, the same actions will happen in battle, same loot drops. It's a weird mess.
Wow.
And there's glitchy audio too.
So I hate to jump ahead a little bit, but there's late game quests where you try to defeat certain numbers of monsters in each region. So that might be impossible with that kind of glitch in place.
Yeah, I know. And also, this is funny, but someone on Twitter actually tweeted a picture of this where she was fighting a random battle and the game randomly gave her the trophy for beating Penance.
She's like, yeah, I totally did that.
Which is a super boss from like hour 85 and not the very beginning of the game.
So what I just heard is I should be playing this on PS4 so I can get my platinum trophy.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to do it.
What's funny too is like there are these small things in these HD releases that really sort of frustrate me. Like Kingdom Hearts 2.5, by all accounts, is the best version of the game, except that because of how slow a Blu-ray drive reads, drive transformations and summons have lag to them. And load times are longer, so there are certain bosses that like have a timer late game in KH 2.5 where like you have to defeat an enemy a certain number of times or you die instantly, that are made harder because of they won't let you install it to the hard drive, which I feel like would be the fastest way to solve the problem. But the game's not available digitally either for whatever reason. I'm guessing copyright with Disney. So it's sort of a shame that that there's this caveat in what should be the best version of the game, because maybe for the casual player or the person who's just playing through the storyline, that's no big deal, but for folks like Josh and myself who can't touch an RPG without doing literally everything, that's going to cause problems in that late metagame, and that is what has stopped me from buying it right away.
Yeah, right. And also I'm really hoping they do a PS4 version, really hoping, and they put
of what?
I'm going back to Kingdom Hearts. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If you want me to start talking about Kingdom Hearts, we can do the whole podcast on that.
Oh my goodness, Josh. Yes. I also hope there's a PS collection of all of them, but we should talk about FF10 and we could talk about Kingdom Hearts at another date.
I don't think it's possible for Steven to go an entire podcast of anything without mentioning Kingdom Hearts.
See, but you weren't here last night. I'm fine with us talking about Kingdom Hearts the whole time instead of Xenosaga. So
I did bring up Xenosaga a lot. It's just the parallels made themselves apparent to me.
Moving back,
oh boy.
So
moving back a sec. If it makes you feel better, Josh, I'm looking at my shelf now. I have 4 copies of Final Fantasy X and 3 copies of 10-2, if you count all the versions of the games that I own.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it might be a testament to Square Enix, like whatever.
Yeah, I think I've bought Final Fantasy IV 6 times, but yeah, keep going.
Right, it's one of those things like I have multiple Chrono Triggers. I have a trillion different Kingdom Hearts games. I have multiple Final Fantasy games. Well, just every time they do a re-release, you see just the whole internet bitches about it. They're selling it again. They're selling it again.
You know what? They wouldn't if you didn't buy it.
And that's the thing is, like, deep down it hurts my soul. Like, it's like, why am I doing this? I'm smarter than this. But I love these games.
Yeah, exactly. I do too. Like, I know people get all up in arms about that, but, it's like when they announced the God of War collection for PS4, and I made this point. It's like, oh, I can't believe they're re-releasing it. Don't buy it.
Yep.
Because
was it Capcom recently? They were trying out the remasters and the HD versions, and it sold so well. They're like, we're gonna keep doing this, and everybody got really upset. But as soon as they announced their first one, everybody got super excited for it.
Yeah,
it's both Capcom and Sega are doing that right now, and people couldn't be happier.
The further point to make with it too is that you have to look at it. A lot of people who had Xbox 360s and not PS3s now have PS4s.
Yep.
So there's a lot of people who didn't have the chance to play these games that want to buy it now. And then further, if you look at the Chinese market, which is opening up now, PS4 is there. Square Enix is talking about how there's not a lot of ways in China for people to play the classic Final Fantasies because of the lack of the inability to get certain consoles. So they're like, yeah, we want to get these games on modern consoles too, because we know you want them, despite the fact that you complain over and over again that you don't. And then the sales show that you do, but there's an audience that has never played them. And so I think people forget that with these HD releases, that people do want these. You may not want it, and the loud people on the internet may not want it, but myself, and I'm sure some of you guys, and a lot of people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always going to be in favor of HD
those loud people on the internet are probably, total hypocrites that are buying them too, I have to think.
There hasn't been a good Final Fantasy since 4. I'm not buying this, buys it.
And exactly. They're basically complaining all the way to the game store and all the way out the game store.
I bought Lightning Returns just to confirm that the series hasn't been good since 6.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. I wear my disdain openly for people who lie and say they don't care about Final Fantasy anymore, because I think that they're full of crap.
Well,
there are people who don't like it, and I realize that's the thing, but I think we have a lot of people on our own message boards who are like, series has sucked forever. I'm curious about Final Fantasy 50.
I'm full of crap for a variety of reasons, but it's true that my Final Fantasy fandom has diminished a lot over the years, because I'm one of those idiots that loves the Super Nintendo and PS1 ones the most. But it's still such an important series, and probably the most visible JRPG series in the entire world.
Yeah, and you want it to be good.
So, yeah, I want it to be good, and sometimes I like the newer ones, sometimes I don't. But it's an important series that I want to be good every time I try one.
So I actually fall in the other realm. For me, they've gotten better over time.
You think so?
Yeah,
for me,
you like 12 the best.
So 12 is my favorite Final Fantasy, and then super caveats on all of this. Final Fantasy X was my first Final Fantasy game. I remember my grandmother was taking me to the store. I don't remember. We were doing some stupid errands. We ended up at a Best Buy. And I remember the game being $90 or $100. It was something outrageous.
What?
It was ridiculously expensive. That's all I remember. Because I remember having to convince her that I really wanted it because the cover looked so cool. And there was an X on it. I don't know. It's some stupid kid logic, right? And I remember her arguing. It was like, all the other games are $40 or whatever. You can get 3 games, or we can get this 1 game. And I remember just arguing with her, and I got it, and I remember loving it. And that was my introduction to the series, and that's where so from there I've gone on. That's where I started jumping back, and I played 4. Then I went to 9, kind of dabbled with 7 and 8. That's where I found Tactics, and then 12 came out, and like I absolutely fell in love. 13, I think, is like the coolest battle system ever.
It's a really great turn-based system because a lot of turn-based systems have difficulty staying difficult. I think because of how linear 13 is, the combat ends up being really engaging, especially once it opens itself up fully. You know, it has its fair share of problems, but I also agree that 13 is sort of unfairly bashed, and I think part of that is just because people are so used to how good they generally are that 13 has sort of an identity crisis, and that's like development problems, but like...
then for me, like 15, I have been dying for Versus 13 forever.
Same here, buddy.
Me too.
And so 15, like I can't even begin to describe how unbelievably excited I am. So for me, they've actually gotten better, which I think 4 is unbelievable. But a lot of the PS1 games, like I really liked 9, 7, and 8. I have never understood why anybody liked those games.
Well, it's also 7's a little more dated, I think. You look at Final Fantasy VI, that is the best possible polygonal stuff that the platform can do, along the same way that, or the best sort of sprite work that Super Nintendo can do. 9 is the best polygonal stuff that the PlayStation 1 can do. So when you go backwards, the games do look a little pedestrian by comparison. Although I think that 7 and 8 still have great art design that shines through.
Yeah, and so, but for me, like 10 is like, there's such a nostalgia value to me because this is my like introduction to an entire almost genre in a lot of ways, but for sure this whole series.
Absolutely.
I mean, personally, I started my first JRPG was Final Fantasy IV, although at the time I thought it was called Final Fantasy II. And I remember playing that, and then shortly after playing that at a friend's house, FF6 came out, although I thought it was called FF3 at the time. and I starting from FF4 and 6, I sort of like would play most Square games within a year or two after they came out, and like both for like forging what my tastes became over the years, and for just being among my favorite games ever. The like Square's output in the 90s really made me the kind of gamer I am today. So at some level, I am one of those bitter fans that will never think there will be a Final Fantasy game as good as 6 or Tactics, but I have come around on almost all of them. Like, I think Final Fantasy X's great. I think Final Fantasy 12 would be great if it was actually a finished game.
12 is the best game ever.
That's an interesting
It sounds
theory.
like we may have to play 12 when that HD release comes out on this show.
Oh god, please, yes, I want it.
Oh, okay, so that's good. That means we're never playing it. And
I would not be surprised if Square Enix announces it at this year's E3.
if
They've
we
already
got
said they're
Zodiac
making
Job,
announcements.
if we got the 12 Zodiac Job System version in the United States, I would totally get it because that game seems to make some fascinating changes.
It's a great way of shoring up the game's weaknesses. You know, it's still not perfect, but it is the best version of that game.
So yeah, even though and also it's weird that this to mention, I worked for an old school Final Fantasy game website before joining RPG Fan. So
you had some of your work there, I think, if I recall, in your application. I think you linked to it, didn't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and and there's that place is still kicking around. It's one of the few video game websites older than RPG Fan on the internet.
RPG Fan isn't it?
Yeah, but so I have really an old school background with Final Fantasy games, and over the past 10 years or so, I mean, it took me that long to broaden my horizons in RPGs. Like, I would only play Square crap until I had a PS2 and started playing other, non-Square series. And it was really eye-opening to be playing like all of these Atlas and Tales games for the first time. And as my interest in other JRPGs was increasing, it felt like Square's output was not as strong as it was in that 90s. Because, like, in Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Super Mario RPG, and Secret of Mana all came out in the same 18 months. That's crazy.
I think also, too, I mean, I still like Square a lot. I think they had a pretty rough last 5 years or so, but they've been really turning it around with their reputation.
They have.
They're developers, so I think they're on the upswing again. But I do agree that, I started with 7, and so, like, I found Final Fantasy Tactics. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what a tactics game was. I was just like, FF7 was amazing. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, this game is amazing, too. And, like, these are the games that made me buy consoles. I bought a PS1, well, for Resident Evil, but then FF7 came out and it was amazing. I bought a PS2 so I could play Final Fantasy X. Well, Final Fantasy X, Metal Gear 2, and Soul Reaver 2, but mostly for Final Fantasy X. And, the thing about 10, I think, is that it's like 7, where this is the first time we've seen the series in this type of fidelity. Like, 13 looks great now, and the series has this reputation for pushing the envelope, but, the first several Final Fantasies were pretty humble looking. It wasn't probably until around 7, you could say 6, because 6 had great sprite work, but, 7 is the first one where they became known for their graphics, and when 10 came out, I mean, the CG cutscenes in 10, were so good that people, commented, how it made the in-game graphics look weird, because, they look a lot more Japanese in the CG cutscenes than in-game, because they're, the fidelity is so much higher, and, just think of... I remember the first time I played 10, I was super looking forward to it. I had a PS2, and, none of my friends did, so, one of them got the demo disc that had 10 on it, and was like, dude, I gotta come over. And I just remember, me and, 3 of my friends sitting in my room, watching the intro where Titus is sitting, and I'm calling him Titus. I don't care how it's pronounced in Japanese. I know I speak Japanese, but Tita is the wrong name. That demo, where he's just sitting in the water and then Blitzball starts, and Otherworld, which, while grading to me now, was amazing at the time, because I loved rock and roll music in middle school. I was just oh my god, 10 is so amazing, it's next gen, brah!
I know, for sure. I'll keep mine brief, because we're gonna get into the game soon more. But maybe, possibly, we can talk about 13 some more. I can talk about that.
I think we should talk about 10 for now. I want to hear what your introduction to 10 is.
So I was a Nintendo kid growing up, so I'm playing on my cousin's Super Nintendo, so Mario, Kirby, really into Pokemon when that was becoming popular. And then like I said earlier, I was in 2nd grade, and I saw they had the strategy guide for FF10. I saw this dude standing up to his knees in water, holding a sword that was also made of water, and I was like, that looks so cool. What is this? And I borrowed it and took it home and read through the whole strategy guide without knowing anything about the game whatsoever, just looking at the art and being like, this looks like the coolest thing ever. And then my friend yeah, I know, right? And my friend Scott had the game, so when I was at his house one time, he was playing it. He was stuck on the first Seymour fight where he summons Anima, and I watched that fight, and it was just my tiny little mind was blown, because I had no idea that games could be that dramatic, or that there was a giant mummified demon thing that was killing people on his screen. And I don't know, it made an impression. And then fast forward through several years of playing through most every game in the series thanks to that introduction to 10, and yeah, here we are today talking about it on Retro Encounter.
Well stated. No, yeah, it's... I think 10, we talked about the polarizing reactions, because 10 is the first one in a long time, or ever, I guess, to not have a world map in terms of the numbered series. But what I really like about 10 is just, it has this really different sort of tack to its storyline, where we talked about how, thematically, Trails in the Sky is, growing up in maturity and stuff, but 10 is very much sacrifice. In some regard, everyone in 10 is making some sort of sacrifice for somebody else.
Right.
And I just feel being the first, we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, it's the first Final Fantasy with voice acting. It's the first Final Fantasy to not have ATB since it was invented.
That voice acting makes such a big difference. Coming from Trails in the Sky, the first time I heard somebody actually speak, it was blew my mind. It actually was perfect timing, because in a lot of ways that's how it was 14 years ago. It was the first time that you got to hear the voice acting, and everybody went insane about it. And that's literally what I did when I first started this up, because I wasn't used to hearing that after a month of Trails in the Sky.
Yeah, and even though you could point out how it's sort of recorded in tone with Japanese vocal mannerisms, I think it's still actually the voice acting has aged fairly well for when it came. When it came out, you had Metal Gear, which had great voice acting, and then you had the rest of the video game world, basically, with some exceptions, Legacy of Kain, stuff like that. But we sort of take for granted now that having good voice acting is an expectation, and not every game does. But 10 did a pretty good job with it. And it just all these changes to the series, and it has such this distinctive visual flair to it, like the ocean motif and like the scenes of like them in Lake Macalania, or when Unit first does the sending dance. Like those are iconic scenes that like have people. Those are unforgettable to me. Like I've played some games in more modern games that like I can't remember what happened to them, and I liked them and beat them like a week ago. Whereas I remember like all these really specific story beats in 10 because of how distinctive narrative-wise and visually it was, and of course the amazing music.
Yeah, and this is gonna sound really stupid, and I kind of cringe already as I get ready to say this, but the intro movie came on, and it was almost that sense of coming home. Like I
totally agree.
It was amazing. I remember, this is how it usually works. I always watch the intro video when you first put a disc in. And then you press start, and whenever they play the same thing a second time, it always really irritates me. It did it this time, did not care. I was just so happy to be playing this again.
That's actually not to derail us, but that's how I feel when I play Kingdom Hearts. But no, yeah, it's like, well, think about like FF8. FF8 has a different video before the intro than out of it. Like the intro is like all those like black and white shots of everybody with that cool song. But you're right, with this one, it's such a distinctive intro, like one of my favorite in the series. And so yeah, absolutely. I didn't watch it twice, but coming back to it definitely felt like I was coming back to my childhood.
I don't share quite your level of nostalgia for this game. I mean, I played the game once ages ago and didn't even do the end game content. I think my clock was like 35 hours when I finished it. But there's tremendous impact to the very beginning of Final Fantasy X. It's like, especially since I don't think I'd ever seen water as beautifully animated until seeing that intro for the first time, and and how it balances color amazingly, because in the first, say, 2 hours of the game, you have this crazy ethereal black and purple and blue Zanarkand. Then you have these gray dark ruins where that almost feels like a survival horror game when that giant fish is chasing you. And then you're on Besaid Island, which is this gorgeous, like sort of like amazing beach and tropical landscape. I think I don't think it was a random encounter. I think it was an episode of Rhythm Encounter last year where you did summer music episodes.
Yep, and we played the FF10 HD Besaid Island, yeah.
Yeah, you even said FF10 feels like a summer game. I think you said that about Chrono Cross as well. But I mean, just because it has that really bright, like candy-colored palette in the early part of the game, and the music is so breezy and not very melodramatic, with the exception of a couple boss themes, I guess. But so yeah, Final Fantasy X, I don't share quite as much nostalgia as you guys do. Like I was annoyed when the intro movie of the menu was the same as the intro for the very beginning of the game. But it has tremendous impact, and the visuals were awesome 14 years ago and looked really nice cleaned up for the PS3, at least to me.
They're unbelievable on the PS4. The sending looks spectacular. Even Blitzball looked good, and I hate Blitzball.
Blitzball, I think, is going to be a fun topic in episode 2.
I barely played any Blitzball the first time I played it, so I'm actually going to give Blitzball a fair shot this time. By the time we have episode 2 ready, I'll have played some Blitzball.
You're a better man than I, Mike.
Was that a Freudian slip of bitchball?
No, I think your ears just wanted to say that.
Richball? Look, I'm going to have to play Blitzball because I'm not playing this game without World Champion and attack reels, because Waka needs to spin in a tornado and kill everything.
Waka, waka, waka.
Waka, waka, waka.
Every time I hear Waka, I think of Pac-Man.
It's a real good game, yeah?
It's a good game, yeah? Everybody here got double consonant name, yeah?
I mean, I think of Fozzie the Bear when I hear Waka Waka, but whatever. Maybe I'm just older than all of you guys.
Different strokes.
This is a little detail about FF10 that I always like, and that I always notice every time in that tutorial section. That motion blur effect that you get when it's transitioning into a battle. I really like that. It's really cool looking.
Yeah, and that was in like a lot of those PS2 era Square Enix games. Like it was in like, it's around the Pyreflies when they die, and it's in Kingdom Hearts a lot.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch. It makes things, I guess, it just makes things seem that much more exciting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean it's similar to what they did in even the older Final Fantasy games, except it just looks 20 times better.
Yeah, I know, right?
With this level of visuals.
But even with the fish, when you're underwater and it's swimming around in a circle, it makes the fights more dynamic.
How about how freaking scary that giant skeleton fish thing is?
Oh god, that guy that comes back to be a boss later.
Yeah, I mentioned a minute ago that it almost feels like a survival horror game during that section, but yeah, that thing's terrifying. I was like, because I mentioned it's been like 10 years since I played the game, so at the very beginning during that cutscene, I'm like, does Titus have like one leg the rest of the game? I don't know. Because he's wearing pants that look like should only have one leg. So
yeah, let's not get into character art and clothes.
Maybe that's for the rest of his pants.
Well, we could just beat that dead horse that died in 2002 by just complaining about voice work and clothes the whole time. Like how the character with the highest evade in the game is wearing a dress made of belts and high heels. Because that makes sense.
It's because she's a baller.
Sure, whatever. Dress made of belts. Not very defensible. And God, this. Also, now that I've played Dragon Age Origins like 3 times the past 5 years, Lulu looks a lot like Morrigan.
She does.
Just in like her hair and makeup.
In all fairness, Morgan looks like Lulu.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, both of them look like Claudia Black anyway.
Yeah. Nothing's wrong with that.
No, not at all. Now I just wish that Lulu had an Australian accent.
Does that make Alistair Waka? If we're making Dragon Age comparisons,
yeah, man, I'm gonna chop the dragon's head off, man. Then I'm gonna kill Logan and fight the fiend. Yeah.
No, that makes Waka Bending Rodriguez, and Marcus Phoenix.
Hey, baby, want to kill all humans?
Kill all the humans.
Oh, Bender, you didn't sleep with the Crushinator, did you? Nah, man, you got to romance a lady that fine.
Oh boy.
I like this drama.
I think I did a double take several years ago when I first understood that Waka was voiced by John DiMaggio.
Yeah, I did not realize it until my roommate started playing the game like 3 months ago, and he was like, "Yeah, John DiMaggio's Waka." And I'm like, "What?"
I don't remember when I learned that, but it was several years ago, and it took me at least a month just to process that.
That was one of my favorite stages in life, like playing games, when I realized that like voice actors legitimately bounce from game to game.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's only like 25 of them to do every single game.
Right, and then all of a sudden it's like
and Yuri Lowenthal.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're just like,
and Steve Bloom.
I can pick out all these people. Like I know who these people are, and like
yeah.
It's like watching any anime today. Bryce Papenbrook is in everything.
Hey, baby, want to kill all Al Bhed? Whoa, calm down, Waka.
Is Bryce Papenbrook the successor to the Nolan North, Troy Baker leading man of the moment award?
At the very least, he plays the main characters in Blue Exorcist, Sword Art Online, and Attack on Titan. So he's getting
okay.
there.
No. He'll be Troy Baker's successor in 6 months. I dig it. Sure.
Okay. Cool.
I'm total aside. I still think it's hysterical that they made Troy Baker Nolan North's brother in the new Uncharted game.
It's fantastic.
I think it's fantastic because I'm not tired of either of them, and now it's going to be amazing.
I'm not tired of either of them either, but it just feels like that Naughty Dog sort of got the joke and just decided to let that happen. It's great.
Well, they're so talented. They're ridiculously good.
Like Nolan North voices Deadpool in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. He sounds like a psychopath.
He does Penguin.
Yeah. Troy Baker does Two-Face and Joker. And then, like in the year he was in like The Last of Us and BioShock and one other game that I think sucked. And it's like he sounded different in all of them. Like they have range. They're really great. They're not used because they're crappy.
The only bad thing about when Nolan North was doing like he was in almost every game is everybody wanted to be Uncharted, so they made him do his Uncharted voice. And now once we've moved past that...
He doesn't sound like Drake when he's Ezio Auditore, but... whatever. That's neither here nor there. We have the main character of Final Fantasy X, who is also Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank. And the same 30 voice actors are used in every video game, and it's sort of fun just following who does what. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. So we talk about Final Fantasy X again?
We could start trying to.
It's
well,
right
I
there
think on
in
the other
title of
hand,
the
though,
podcast.
too, we're all just getting started. There's not a whole lot to discuss yet. I guess maybe we could talk about like what your expectations are for the game because we've all played it. So like for me, it comes down to, I have not played 10 since it was on PS2. I've played a little bit of it here and there. But like I remember a lot of the scenes, but I don't remember some of the specifics. And I'm excited to sort of re-experience the game with having played a zillion games since then, knowing that it's basically the template for every other PS2 RPG that came out afterwards, and like still further, like the arc of like 7, 8, 9, 10 has defined turn-based JRPGs to this day. So it'll be cool to sort of play one of the originals again.
So I have like a small question, full disclosure again, I never beat Final Fantasy X.
What?
Yeah. So, whatever.
But one of the best endings in the series.
Yeah, I know how it ends, but whatever. They retconned that, so
let's not talk about that. I'll get angry.
We don't talk about 10 too.
Yeah, maybe we should save that for episode 3 or episode 2-3.
Our poignant, perfect ending that we decided to backpedal on for fan service.
Yeah. So my question is, with the Albed primers, with the alphabet and whatnot,
right?
Since you can load in your like previous saves, dictionaries and whatnot, if you've gone through and you've collected all of those, like when Titus is so confused with the conversation when he first comes across them, can he understand them then, or can only you as the reader understand?
Only you as the reader.
Yeah. It doesn't change any of Tidus's reactions, but you can see what they're saying. It'll be in a different color of text to indicate that it's Albed that's been translated. But it's even weirder if you got something like, I don't know, 20 out of the 26 primers, then some of the letters will remain untranslated, so you might have to do a little bit of decoding as the reader.
What's the purpose of it then?
Just curiosity's sake. It's like playing Eco the second time and being able to understand Yorda.
I don't know. So one of the things, this is one of the most, like, I think, successful moments in gaming for me, at least, and to do another tangent, was Uncharted 2, when you first enter in the Himalayas with, I'm going to blank out his name, but
Tenzin?
Yeah, Tenzin.
Yeah.
And he never, like, the two of you can't understand, but even though you can't understand, you can understand him.
Yeah, that whole ice dungeon that you do with him is amazing because, like, in part because of the communication barrier and like how you have to sort of figure out this complicated double-sided dungeon with someone that doesn't speak the same language as you.
Right.
And in FF10, I think that just sort of puts a little, even hits the point a little bit harder that Tidus is a stranger in a strange land. He's getting shoved around. He doesn't understand any of the customs and some of the language. And so a lot of it's strange and confusing to him, especially the religion that he has no knowledge of and what the hell sin is. But he has a convenient excuse.
So exactly.
Know anything.
And for me, I think that would actually ruin some of those moments for me if you could actually understand what they're saying.
Well, sure, but that's why you can only understand it on a second or third playthrough.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's more of a curiosity thing rather than a like look at how this is changing it.
And I think you can actually miss the place you have to go to import the Albed primers if you just skip straight through that first section.
That's true.
Or you can choose not to import them.
Yeah, that's true. Good points. Well done.
But also, one other thing that I guess I just thought of, it's how weird is it for Tidus that he doesn't understand so many things, has all this crazy crap happening to him at once, but he still notices like similarities to his life. How the praise be to Yevon prayer is the victory sign for blitzball teams.
That's awesome.
And how he just notices similarities to his world, and he assumes that he's been flung into the far future. I mean, we all know exactly what's happened, but we're not going to say anything. And it's really smart how they integrate like little details that are familiar to Tidus, while there's a bunch of unanswered questions that he has, and how they basically the balance of when they open and close plot doors in Final Fantasy X is really impressive.
Yeah, and it's actually sort of, I agree with you on that point, and like, there are like the Spoonie experiment or whatever, and all these videos that sort of rip 10 for like all these nitpicky type things, and yeah, if you want to nitpick the storyline, you're going to find holes, but that sort of misses the forest for the trees, I think, in that how much care has gone into 10's storyline, and that like there are a lot of small details that make this a really compelling story. Like, like you said, all the similarities between what Titus believes is real Xanarkand versus like Xanarkand 1 year in Spira, and just all these little parallels and things like that, and like how his journey sort of parallels his father's journey despite the fact that he hates his father, and like, it's all these really cool details that whenever I read one of those things that's like, this is why FF10 actually sucks, and I'm like, no, this is why you actually suck, shut your face.
And you know what I always thought was a really strange decision? I say decision, basically a really strange thing that the writers did for this game that in retrospect I think is totally brilliant, is how when you meet up with Auron again at the end of, I think it's at the end of the Lucas stuff, I'm actually not there yet in the game in this current playthrough, is when he, like a minute after Auron and Tidus start talking again, he just goes, oh, Sin is Jekt. And Tidus is like, what the F? And it's not explained. It's like no one in the party seems to think that, but Auron just decides to do this huge plot bomb that doesn't get resolved until near the end of the game, and it just throws both Tidus and the player into confusion, and that's just one of the things that doesn't get resolved until way later. It's amazing that they would have such a confusing plot point that ultimately resolves in an interesting way. It's crazy. Like I'm amazed that they did it, and it's a really cool touch, I think. They threw you off balance with that reveal, because it doesn't make any sense when Auron tells you Sin is Jekt.
Absolutely. No, I agree. Like the pacing of the plot is very good.
Yeah. Their clothes are all still ridiculous though.
Lulu wears a dress made of belts. I think we agree on that.
I mean, Yuna's is okay. She's wearing a kimono.
Yeah, it's basically like a Shrine Maiden costume, I think, with a lot of extra ribbons attached.
Tidus at least looks like he's wearing garb appropriate for what he was doing at the beginning of the game. That he continues to wear it is what the problem is.
Yeah, why does he ever change
That's
clothes?
supposed to be a sports uniform?
Yeah, it's a blitzball uniform. That's why Waka's is similar in some ways. Although, again, that begs the question of why Waka continues to wear a blitzball uniform on a pilgrimage, which will involve death.
Well, I mean, Waka is using a blitzball for the entire journey.
That's true. So
Waka's an idiot.
A blitzball that can turn you to stone, so, I mean...
But, like, Waka... It's a little early maybe to talk about it, so I won't go too far in depth, but like some of the things they do with the characters are also really interesting. Like, the other Final Fantasies have their fair share of dark plot lines, like Cyan is sort of religious, and like there's the poisoning of the river, and
Cyan's arc is incredibly tragic.
But like if you think about who Waka is as a character, his growth is really cool because Waka is a freaking racist, like an open racist that is like sort of not apologetic for it, and like that's a really interesting arc that I think not a lot of Japanese RPGs really tackle one of your characters being a racist. It's like, that guy's bad. He hates elves. But, Waka being with you is like, you're like sort of forced to confront this flaw he has.
Yeah, if anything, I mean, Final Fantasy X is almost like a Bildungsroman for Waka, because he's devoutly religious and racist towards Albed, and has these sort of deep-seated cultural opinions, and they all get shaken in the last quarter of the game.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting how everyone reacts to this. And also, I think it's a little funny that Tidus does all these very religiously inappropriate things that people just seem to brush off easily because he had some sin toxin. But I'm just amused by that, I guess. But
I love those when they're just like, what? And he's like, oh, sin, toxin. Yeah, I got too close. Everybody's just like perfectly okay with that.
He's like, sorry, I'm an idiot.
It's awfully convenient.
My bad.
And I want to talk about now the thing that I was sort of most impressed by FF10, that I basically remembered from when I played it ages ago, but was a really pleasant surprise on how fast-moving the combat is. Because it's super easy to switch characters in and out and get like your entire party taking part in these in battles, and it's faster than changing a Pokemon or changing a Persona in a Pokemon or Persona game. It's great.
Yeah, the thing is, it's not ATB anymore, but I would actually argue that it's faster than some of the games with ATB. Certainly, like, I love FF9, but that game's battles take forever. And, like, you have no ATB in this, but it's like swap a character, boom, done. Attack, boom, done. You get the short summons. It's quick. It's sort of like a Shin Megami Tensei game where, like, yes, it's turn-based, but these turns are resolving very quickly.
I like that there's not a punishment for switching players out, too.
Yeah, in fact, it's almost encouraged, like that makes for some really cool, compelling strategy, like, much like 13, where it's like, there's more strategy than just, I have to use my most powerful attack. It's like, oh, I need to use Waka because he can hit the enemy from far away, or I need Orin because he can break the enemy's armor. Right. Later that changes when you, get overpowered, but it's really, like, if you stick to that arc, it's a really compelling progression of combat.
And in a way, that's the only disappointing part of that is, at least if you're playing the old sphere grid system, I think a lot of FF10 players totally ignore Kimahri because he doesn't have an obvious strength and it'll have you use everyone but him. I've heard that from a ton of different players of the game, and not just me. But
yeah, no, absolutely. That's how I felt about him too. He's quite weak if you use the original sphere grid.
So yeah, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed at how quick and modern the battle system feels, and like you mentioned this earlier, Stephen. But there's like none of the animations feel overly long or cumbersome except for maybe the Aeon summons, and you can turn that into quick animation if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think maybe we could start winding up for this one and actually, get to playing some more of the game before we get to our middle episode. But so I want to end with one last question. I think this will be interesting for the listeners too, because we want to hear, hop on the board and tell us what you're going to be doing. But with the new HD version, if you're playing that, you have the option of using the International Sphere Grid, the Expert one, or the original Sphere Grid. And having no experience with FF10 International, I went with the Expert Sphere Grid. Mostly because I do sort of want to make...
Sphere Grid sounds so much cooler than Sphere Grid.
I said Sphere Grid because I had a Freudian slip because I'm actually going to use Kimahri because I never used him before because he was terrible. And I'm gonna try to make the big blue teddy bear, as Josh called him last night, a viable member here.
Wait,
I'm also going to use Riku. I never used Riku ever, and I'm going to try to make
Persona 4?
I wish.
Blue teddy bear?
Teddy would be awesome.
Teddy would be awesome in every context.
Yep. Teddy always wins.
So, Josh, which grid are you using?
So I use the standard for a couple reasons. First, I hate Kimahri. You shouldn't bring a blue bear on a quest. And then number
Teddy's
two,
blue. Like you just said, you like Teddy. He's blue.
Teddy's whitish, and his head zips off, and there's nothing inside.
Teddy's blue. Teddy's fur is blue.
He's not even really a bear.
I think you're backpedaling here.
He's a zippered nothingness.
Teddy is totally a blue bear, like even more so than Kimahri is. But yeah, continue with your lies.
Continue with your lies, yes.
And then most important, like I said before, I haven't actually beaten it. I kind of got to a point at the end that I felt hopeless, that I couldn't progress from where I was. And I remember that, and that was ultimately why I stopped. And so kind of to further complicate the leveling process with the Expert Sphere Grid, it just seemed like a bad choice. So that's that. I decided to go with the standard. I figured it'd just be easier. Excellent.
And Peter, which one are you using?
I'm using the Expert Grid for this run because I haven't done it before, so I thought that would be a nice way to change things up. Plus, I wanted to experiment to see with if I can build characters beyond their parameters from the original Sphere Grid.
Yeah, make Titus super magical.
Yeah, or something like that. But give Lulu, turn Lulu into a tank. I don't know. I'll figure something out.
Tank Lulu would be awesome. Just bludgeons people to death with her Mog doll. It's awesome. And Mike, which one are you using?
I'm using the Expert Sphere Grid. I mean, in general, I'm going to try and make this a different experience than the first time I played Final Fantasy X. So I'm going to use the Expert Sphere Grid. I'm going to try to use all the characters instead of just Tidus, Auron, and Yuna. And I did basically no side quests when I played this game. I didn't get any celestial weapons. I barely did any of the Calm Lands monster stuff. So I'm going to try and actually do some of that and use all the characters and experiment with this new Sphere Grid. Spear Grid. Now I can't unsay that.
Yeah, from henceforth we shall call it the Spear Grid. Because it's all about Kimahri all the time, except in Josh's case where it's never about Kimahri anytime.
No, you just start with him in your battle so that you can take him out right away and get the experience for him.
Well, why are you leveling him if you don't even like him, though?
Because I have to level everybody, because everybody has to be at their max.
Ah, okay, right, I understand.
That is a dangerous way of thinking.
It's sort of like how when I play FF10, I have to max everybody, even though we all know I'm not going to use Armor Ant at all.
Yep.
Oh god, I would go insane if I had that mindset going into every RPG, but
Yep, yeah, that's why these are really hard for me, because I have to finish all of them in a month, and I have to somehow try to do everything and max everything out.
Well, I'm gonna try and move slightly towards your end of the spectrum when I play this game, because I almost never play RPGs that way. But this time I'll actually try everything instead of just get to the end. And I guess your way of playing these games, Josh, is you try and do everything you can except actually beat the game.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about this in Trails in the Sky. I can only beat the game if I've done everything else. So
yeah, and that's
railed.
That a lot of times happens to me. I get so caught up on doing everything that in a lot of ways in my mind I feel like I've accomplished everything in the game. Like that happens a lot of times in like Skyrim and Fallout. I've done so much of the world that I feel complete on the experience, and then there's so many other things I want to play.
Yeah.
Just to show the difference between me and you, I beat Skyrim without even setting foot into 2 of the major cities.
Yeah. See, I've done like one major quest in Skyrim, and I've done everything else.
Yeah, I've done. I to this day don't know what happens after you drop off the letter in Morrowind. Yes, I do. But
I beat the game, and I never went into the 2 in the upper left. Whatever they're called, I forget.
Yeah, for the game, I would turn it on and I would spin around in a circle and I would just walk in a direction.
Yep, that's fun. Well, all right, I think that'll wrap us up for this episode. But we're gonna get to what did you guys agree on that we're gonna get to for the second episode, so the listeners can follow along?
The end of Lake Macalania after you beat the Wendigo.
All right, perfect. Sounds great. Well, as always, we said this last night, but. Please do review us on iTunes. That gets us further up on the list of, being able to be potentially downloaded by non-listeners. Introduce your friends to the show, and please do write us emails at retro@rpgfan.com. And definitely follow along. Tell us what you're thinking via email or via the message boards. And we will catch you all very soon in Lake Macalania as we continue on the Sorceress's pilgrimage.